That is a highly controversial topic.
It's not quite moral, but it is a theological explanation.
The idea of like apocalyptic literature is not that it's to be interpreted in necessarily a literal sense.
Yeah, I'm impressed by your very thorough research.
I just started thinking about this because, as you might imagine, nobody's ever asked me in church about Judas.
That's a fascinating philosophical discussion.
I think it's important to talk to them and find out what they believe. Hello, everyone. Thanks again to those who are helping out on Patreon. The links are here and down below in the thingy. Once again, the questions are marked out on the YouTube timeline, so if there's a question in which you have a particular interest, feel free to skip ahead. My guest this time is Pastor Kussman, who may have the most interesting backstory of any pastor I've interviewed thus far, and may have witnessed an actual miracle. I hope you enjoy the interview, and make sure you stick around for the end where I tell you 2 things you probably didn't know. Hello and welcome to the What They Believe series. Today my guest is Pastor Kussman of the St. Bartholomew Lutheran Church in Trenton, New Jersey. Pastor Kussman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see where this conversation leads us. You know, one thing to build community is always, or just relationships with people in general, is getting to know each other.
Were you always a Lutheran or did you convert?
The fun part about it all is I didn't even grow up in the church. I grew up, at a very precarious background and upbringing. I grew up in poverty in New Jersey. And the only times I even recall stepping into a church growing up is a wedding and a funeral, 2 times in my whole younger years. So, but yeah, I guess a convert. And if you would allow me, I'll explain that to you.
Certainly.
People are like, wow, what great theological constructs or blah, blah, did you come to Lutheranism? Well, there was a time period when I was looking for a church. And as you hinted to, I have a backstory. So I'll probably be jumping in and out of that a little bit. But, I had this newfound faith. I came out of a certain situation. And so we were looking for a church. My fiance at the time, we're going to churches. And, we went to the Presbyterians. We went to the Methodists, Episcopalians, non-denominationals, Pentecostals, all of that. And the one common denominator between all of those, and the reason why I'm not with them, is because when they found out my backstory, they told me pretty much I wasn't welcome in their congregations. Oh yeah, that's that Christian love for you. So the last church in this place we were living at that wound up accepting us, we came in, my fiance came, she has her kids, we're coming into the church. And the pastor just looks down and he goes, oh, you have 2 young children. Did you know we offer free preschool to our members? And I said, I am sold. I'm Lutheran from here on out. So that's how I came to be a part of the Lutheran Church.
Why did you become a pastor?
I did have a divine experience with God is prehistory. I wound up finding myself incarcerated for a very long time. But in a midst of that incarceration, when I was in the county jail facing astronomical years, you would say, right? And there's like these group of Christian men in the jail that would come to my cell. And I guess the cell at the time when it was empty, they made it their chapel. What the heck did I know anything about that, right? I was like, man, you guys are crazy. Get out of here. I would argue with them. I spit at them for months. I'm talking months. I gave up because they kept coming back. 6 o'clock in the morning, gates open. Here they came with their little Bibles and their little devotionals, and they're having. I'm like, you know what? I just threw the blanket over my head and I said, they're not a threat, whatever. This one time, going through the motions, like 8-10 months in, I had this urge to pray. I said, I don't know. So I'm going to pray to your God today. This is going to be great. And you should have heard them. Praise Jesus. Brother Eric's going to pray. Brother Eric's going to pray. And I'm like, all right, let's go pray. So I pointed my finger dead in the sky and I said, God, if you're real, you're going to let me out of jail. You start talking stuff like that to some religious folk, they call you all types of names after that. Blasphemy, heretic, this, you can't be praying that. The very next morning, I was mistakenly released from the county jail 2 weeks before my sentencing. Call it coincidence, call it whatever you may want to call it. They let me go. I was out for a whopping 32 hours. Which was a whole crazy experience. We're running into pastors that were, I don't know what they were doing. They had little clipboards and stuff in these streets I was trying to get into. They're trying to talk to me. And, I just felt there was something more than what I knew. Eventually went back to jail. They got me, and I wound up serving 12 years. And then, you know, I took a Bible and I said, I'm going to figure this book out. Not what a preacher says, not what people, the televangelists say, whatever. I'm going to actually figure out what this is all about. If you read the gospel itself, you read the stories, even all through time, you see there's a sense of human beings always looking for that sense of belonging, right? That sense of togetherness, even a sense of direction in a sense. The basic principles and tenets of the faith is like love your neighbor as yourself, you know, stand up for the marginalized and oppressed. You know, there's certain script that just stuck with me. And I looked at how I was raised. And I was like, wow, I grew up in that kind of poverty. I've witnessed a lot of this stuff, you know, from blatant racism to a lot of the kids that I grew up, used to get beat up by the cops and sometimes even killed because of their skin color. So I said, if this is what this Jesus is all about, I'm all in. And here I am. You know, just real quick, in the city of Trenton, you know, COVID just ran wild. A lot of like 40% of the city lost jobs. School's been in and out. It's been real insane. And, you know, you're dealing with some low income working class folks that are relying on their jobs, single mothers with kids. So, you know, and this, when I got to this church, and this is me just starting my call, because you'll get a kick out of this. I looked at it and I said, we got all this space and we're not doing nothing with it. I said, let's start a food ministry. And currently right now we're serving up to 351 families every week, making sure they get groceries. Because I'm tired of hearing mothers saying, well, I don't know if I could put gas in my car or food on the table. Nobody should be living like that. And that's when I get called a communist. Read enough Jesus, you'll see a lot of Marxist theology in there, but we'll get into that somewhere else.
Jesus gave out a lot of free healthcare.
Shouldn't we then? I'm saying if all these, you know, this quote unquote Christian nation, you know, believes in this Jesus, shouldn't they be mimicking and walking like that, said Jesus?
Can you clarify the Lutheran view on baptism and its purpose? Such as, does a child become a Christian when baptized?
See, this is always a fun part, and it's also going to go which way of Lutheran thought you're going to go down. And I'm going to choose going down the Philip Melanchthon thought. Philip Melanchthon was a compatriot of Martin Luther, who talked about baptism as baptism being symbolic of your own death, right? And it was important because it's also a means of grace. So it's something that you do to show your faith. Being baptized or not doesn't mean you're saved or becoming a Christian. It's just a sign of an extra means of grace, of something you could rely on, like a visible sign. Kind of like taking communion, right? It's a visible sign of that Last Supper, of you becoming one with Christ by eating the bread and drinking the wine, or grape juice, depends on what you do. But all it is a visible reminder. And it's something you keep in mind that we do a lot of services that are baptismal related, and we always remember our baptismal covenant, meaning that we need to remember who we are, how dusty we are as human beings, that we don't have it all together, and remember there's a greater purpose because we don't have all the answers. I understand that confession is an important part of the Lutheran tradition. Can you explain the value of confessing one's sins to an authority? We do a corporate confession.
Oh, okay.
It's the Catholic Church that lean more into that individual confession, and also the Missouri Synod will do that too, because they want to be like the Catholic little brothers and sisters and stuff. But we believe that it's important to recognize our own sin, you know, our own faults, our own, because nobody's perfect. You know, we could run around and with fake smiles all day long, but also you can't let yourself get so prideful that you think you're better than somebody else. And that's the distinction. So every Sunday morning, the first thing we do in service is a public corporate confession together. And it brings everybody who's in the congregation or watching from home, because we're all live streaming too, is we're all on equal footing no matter where you come from in life. And that's where you need to start. So if you're on equal footing, it gives you the reminder that if your brother or sister is in need, you need to help out with that situation.
Do you believe that we are currently in the end times?
No, we don't believe that at all. No. See, you keep. I love Kirk Cameron and Tim LaHaye and all them crazy people. You know, they're just so great. But no, we're not living in the times of revelations. Do I believe that we're in a new age? Well, it's just like anything else through a cycle. There's always new birth to death, new birth and death. It's a human cycle, and we follow the Earth cycle because you got the 4 seasons, right? Spring, life; summer, nice and pretty and hot; fall, everything starts to die; and winter is just like death, right? But there's beauty in that death, as that's how we continue to walk through this human life. And the end time stuff gives, I think, Christians a bad name in general, because a lot of people like to hold on to that mystical mythology that just doesn't match up with anything else. You know, I'm always a skeptic of the book of Revelation. It's interesting. I always think John, who was locked up there, might have been on a hit of peyote or something when he wrote that thing, but because it doesn't match up with anything. And if you look at Lutheran construct, Luther questioned that a lot also. He didn't like Revelations. He didn't like the book of James, because the book of James didn't really match up with his own theology, being saved by faith. But yeah, no, it is what it is.
So what do you think the end times will look like?
I have no idea. I don't have the answers for that. You know, what it could look like, I don't know. If we keep trying to kill each other and blow the whole planet up, I think that will be the end times. It's going to be a human construct of what that looks like. You know, us wiping out populations, and it's going to, I think our end times is going to more look like them post-apocalyptic movies you watch, you know, minus the zombies, I hope. So
if the book of Revelation, or the Bible in general, is not to be taken literally, how should we take it? How can we tell what parts really happened or are going to happen from what is allegorical?
There's a lot of historic accounts that something was happening. Do we know exactly what was happening? No, and I don't think we ever will. You know, unless we can, you know, be like Marty McFly and hop in the DeLorean and jump back there. When you read the Bible, and it's a collection that spans over hundreds and hundreds of years, centuries, right? You're looking at human beings trying to walk with the understanding that they had at the time and trying to relate to God in that way. You find that with a lot of ancient literature. You find that through the Greeks and the Romans. You know, everybody has stories, you know, and it's human beings just trying to find meaning in their life. So they're writing it down. They're writing these encounters down. And I think that's important, because that tells the human story. And I believe a lot of people gravitate towards the scriptures is because there's something in there, minus all the genocide out of the Hebrew scriptures. But, you know, we're war people, you know, we do it now. You know, we're no different from what you see. Oh, they're so violent. And I'm kind of like scratching my head. And I said, well, so aren't we? So in that aspect, you find in the aspects of those books, the essence of the human condition. So then you get Jesus and a couple. You always have those voices that come out, the prophets of those times, calling people back, or repentance. Repentance means turning away. You turn away from this path you're going on and come back. Recognize your true humanity and why you were created and how you could be a blessing to others. And I think somehow we lose a lot of focus on that, you know. It's really easy to see that because all you got to do is turn on any news channel and you just see everybody's always bickering at each other. You know, there's a lot of name calling, a lot of labeling, a lot of dehumanization, a lot of bigotry, and just straight division. And I don't think our creator, however people want to define their creator to be, or if they even don't believe, how did we wind up like this? Because when we know deep down inside, you know there's a better way. There is.
Reading the Bible and the works of historical Christian leaders such as Martin Luther, and in my conversations with clergy for this series, I noted a recurring theme, that humans are all sinners deserving of death and hell. That's a quote from Martin Luther. What does that do to the mindset of an individual thinking of oneself as worthless, but only to be made better after you're dead?
That's a good question. That's one of them theological questions that there's no magic pill answer for. But I look at it like this, that we are all sinners, yes, but we're all also saints. See that, you keep the evolution of Luther's thought. We're both at one. You can't think you're higher than one or you're your worst self. There's a medium of the human condition. So you tell somebody, we're all, one of my favorite Luther sayings, he calls us all filthy, cankerous worms. That's a great quote. So I bring that up in sermons. The kids love it when I call them all filthy, cankerous worms. They probably go home to their parents saying, Mommy, you know what Pastor Eric done said? As hell is a construct of us, right? If you actually want to get into biblical hermeneutics, the word hell never appears in the Bible. Let's just scratch that right off the hell. But they talk about Hades. Where does Hades come from? Probably a lot of Greek mythology. So that's a common term for the afterlife afterwards. And it boils down to being separated, right? Separation from what? From God and from the community. So you're by yourself. And somebody who has done time for 12 years separated to myself, I know what hell feels like. I don't want that for anybody else. I don't think you would want that for anybody else. So you want them to feel loved because, we're created to talk with each other. And I believe that's the construct of hell. And are we all sinners and deserving of that? Sometimes a lot of us do need a timeout, though. We can't have like the Jeffrey Dahmers of this world running around here. They need the therapy and the medication and whatever else they're going to need. But sometimes in life, we need that mark, the epiphany experience, in a sense, to say, wait a minute, this isn't the right thing to do. This is the way I should be going. And you surround yourself with that community to also help you go that route.
I brought up Martin Luther a few times, but I have to acknowledge he's one person in a much larger Protestant Reformation, and he lived over 500 years ago. What would you consider an important way that modern Lutheranism has departed from Martin Luther's own writings?
Luther got older. Some people blame it on his being senile, wily old ways, whatever it was. But he was very anti-Semitic. He gave rise and empowered the German people in World War II to use his writings to do what they did to the Jewish faith. And it's something now, if you look at a lot of the ELCA statements, that they repent for. There's public repentance and confessions and restoration also, but it's something the Lutheran Church owns, and that's one important aspect of his writings that we moved away from. You also read Luther, first, he was against the hierarchy at the time, the Catholic Church, because of the settlement of indulgences and whatever else they were doing. But he wound up, after being protected by the German princes, right? He started to go against the peasants, and he wrote a lot of things against the peasants during the Peasants' War at the time. And it doesn't match up with his overall theology. So he was human, what can I say? He didn't fall off a cloud either, but those are the things I would depart from Luther from. One person who I like to hold up as an evolution of Luther's thought, his thought, with his theology, not the man himself, was a German theologian named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. But if you follow him, I follow that as the evolution of Luther, which is a wonderful read. Read some more of him, especially his letters and papers from prison. But that was somebody who came from that German aristocrat society, came to Harlem in New York, and his eyes were wide open after that because he saw how the Americans treated African Americans. And he goes, wait, we do that to the Jewish folks. And he went back during the war and was involved with the plot to kill Hitler and all that other good stuff. So, sometimes you're called to act, right?
I'd like to thank Pastor Kussman for speaking with me here today, and I shall do so now. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you for having me.
Here's the thing. I don't mind when Hollywood reboots a superhero franchise. Batman, Spider-Man, whatever. At least it'll be a new story. The basic formula may be the same, but there'll be new plot points and a new adventure. That's not the same for Romeo and Juliet. Sure, there's West Side Story and A Dance of Bullets Ram Leela. I won't attempt that Hindi title. It's the most filmed play, and most of those films are pretty much the same. They're all just remaking the original play by William Shakespeare. Except it was not an original story by William Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet was adapted from the book Palace of Pleasure by William Painter, which itself was adapted from the Tragical History of Romeus and Juliet by Arthur Brooke. And that was published 2 years before Shakespeare was even born. And it was not an original work either. This all came from folktales, so we really don't know who wrote it. I guess my point is, when they finally reboot Meteor Man, don't immediately dismiss it. Here's the thing. In the early years of the HIV epidemic, when the CDC was still trying to research exactly what it was and how it was spreading, a flight attendant was listed as Patient O, as in out of California. However, when the press read these findings, they listed it as Patient 0. The correct term for the first infected person is the index patient, and that flight attendant was not the index patient. But people still use the term Patient 0 because decades ago, someone misunderstood the medical terminology. This is a good argument for that strike-through on a 0. Anyone who's ever had to put in a password in an old video game will back me up on this. Thanks for watching, and may the road rise with you.
Yeah, that didn't go out well. Yeah, it didn't go well at all. Over Black Lives Matter. So he don't think they matter. I just put it out there. Anything the Lutherans can teach you, for the love of God, you don't wed nationalism with your faith. When you think you're better than somebody else, that's heresy right there, because you're not.